Hey Sun Devil fans, Sande Charles here for DevilsDigest.com, and I'm joined by our publisher, Hod Rubino, as we preview this Saturday's game. ASU takes on USC at home, an afternoon game. Now, Hod, coaches and players will tell you that going into a bye off a loss, not to mention back-to-back losses, takes a toll, and it's not ideal. How important is the role of the mentality of the state of the Sun Devils? How important is that this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very, very important because it's not only coming off 2 consecutive losses, but the way that they lost. I think you can make a case that both losses were really demoralizing, losing 23 at Utah. And granted, even only lost 10 points at UCLA. Let's face it, that game was really out of hand midway, just about in the first half. So ASU definitely had really a lot of mental anguish, if you will, after those 2 games. And I think from a also mental standpoint, Herm Edwards has talked about it all year long, playing with more passion than emotion, and ASU did the exact opposite in those last 2 games. 12 penalties against Utah, 9 penalties against UCLA. And Herm Edwards put it best. Arizona State right now is not good enough a team to commit that many penalties and still get away with it when you're playing quality opponents, and that's exactly what happened in those last 2 games. Something I've said time and time again is that as physically violent as this game of football is, it's so easy to overlook how mentally prepared, how mentally ready you need to be each and every week. And I don't think Arizona State was able to be ready in that vein at all in the last 2 weeks. And you really hope that this bye week allowed everybody to take a step back, really take a close look in the mirror and see what they did wrong, not only X's and O's wise, but also from a mental standpoint. And I think that if Arizona State was able to conquer that obstacle, if you will, in a constructive manner, then they should be fine for this game on Saturday. I think another thing from a mental standpoint is that Arizona State really has not much else to play for other than being bowl eligible, which obviously their next win will provide them that, and also being a good bowl once you receive that eligibility. But the dreams of playing in the Rose Bowl or even playing for the Pac-12 South Championship, those dreams are gone. So it's really important for Arizona State just to refocus and believe that they still have a lot to play for, if nothing else, to show progress from 2018 to 2019. So again, I think the coaches, as much as they worked on the mechanics, the techniques of each and every player, I'm sure they worked a lot on the mental aspect, and we'll see if that comes to fruition on Saturday against USC.
Now, USC's offense at the beginning of the year, we all thought was going to be an air raid offense, but ironically, they only started passing the ball as their running backs went down with injuries. What kind of difficulties or challenges are the Sun Devils going to face against this unit?
Yeah, I think it's very ironic that the air raid came to fruition, if you will, under Graham Harrell, the defensive coordinator, who is one of the biggest air raid disciples out there. Once their running back depth has been depleted more and more. I mean, right now their starting running back is really their 4th or 5th string running back if you looked at the depth chart back in August. So they're forced to throw the ball, not because that is the grand vision of Graham Harrell, but rather just out of necessity. They had 57 pass attempts against Oregon. Now, obviously, what happens is in a game like that you get down big so early, then you really have to abandon the running game. And again, the running game wasn't working that well to begin with against a team like Oregon, so you're forced to do that. But I think that by far the strength of this USC offense is actually in their passing game. Keaton Slovis, who prepped locally here at Desert Mountain, true freshman quarterback, one of the biggest surprises, I think, in the entire Pac-12, especially from a newcomer standpoint. And then the wide receiver group is absolutely off the charts, with Tyler Vaughns. Michael Pittman is probably the best wide receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, just from top to bottom, that is a group that I'm sure is keeping every defensive coordinator that's facing them up late at night to figure out how I can go ahead and stop them. This is going to be a game where it's really going to be a delicate balance for Arizona State. On the one hand, to put a lot of pressure on a young quarterback and hope that they can frustrate him enough, really not to get the passing game going for the Trojans. But on the other hand, you have to make sure you got enough people and really extra bodies in coverage against a very good wide receiver group for USC. So you're going to take your chances with the running game for USC, but if you're not going to commit that many people in the box, it's really going to be hard to harass Slovis. So I'm really curious to see how Arizona State and their defense is able to navigate those waters. But one thing you have to be careful about is, as much as we're downgrading, if you will, the running game for USC, you really have to make sure that that's not the aspect that comes out of nowhere and surprises. Because if USC is going to present a balanced offense to Arizona State, something I'm sure the Sun Devils are really not expecting, it really can be a long day in the office for the home team.
Now, in a world of what have you done for me lately, it's hard to be impressed with this USC defense after the lopsided loss to Oregon last week. But still, that being said, ASU might have trouble moving the ball. So what challenges lie ahead?
Yeah, I think when we look at the game against Oregon, I mean, look, they're probably facing the best team in the Pac-12. And some people might say it's Utah, but I still think it might be Oregon by a hair. And in that game, I believe USC did have a pick six, did have a kickoff return for a touchdown. But nonetheless, even if you take those two plays away, you still gave up, over 40 points to Oregon. Now, some people say it's no shame giving up that many points to Oregon, and maybe look at other performances to really judge this defense by. I think what really defines this unit is that it's a group that has a lot of athletes, and I think almost by default is kind of live by the sword, die by the sword mentality. Sometimes you see them going for the big play, and half of the time they'll make it, half of the time they'll just miss a tackle. It seems like it's a group that is very susceptible to plays around the edge, which is kind of surprising for having such good athletes. But again, if the discipline isn't there to make the tackle, to make the good read, and maybe you're relying more on your athletic ability rather than just playing solid X's and O's. I think that is something that really plagued USC and their defense quite a bit. And we talk about the injuries at running back. There's been even more injuries on this side of the ball for the Trojans. The bad news is that for Arizona State fans, remember the recruitment of Drake Jackson, the defensive lineman from Corona Centennial, looks like he's going to be back from injury. And as some people may remember, this is a prospect that Arizona State thought they had in the bag, and USC was able to snag him pretty late before signing day. But overall, I think it's a defense that Arizona State, I think, is going to take their chances running the ball against, because when you look at the standings right now, they're in the lower echelon against the run versus the pass. And I think if this defense is demoralized to any extent after that Oregon loss, after the big Oregon loss, I should say, last week, I think if you can really just pound that ball time and time again and not really take chances with low percentage plays down the field, I think that they can really just suck out the life, suck out the spirit out of this USC defense, which again, I mean, maybe you don't attribute all 56 points given up to Oregon to that unit in itself. But still, that was not a good showing, and you can't say that this group is coming with a lot of confidence into Sun Devil Stadium on Saturday. And Arizona State, even though they lost the game to UCLA where the offense was really anemic in the first half, if you can hang your hat on scoring 22 points in the fourth quarter, build on that, and obviously correcting everything need to be corrected in the bye week, I think this offense can get back on track. I think just with the athletic ability for USC, maybe it won't be a walk in the park, at least not for all 60 minutes. But this is definitely a defense I think Arizona State can really bounce back after a tough loss at UCLA and obviously a loss to Utah the week before.
Now, both of these teams, this is a matchup with both teams desperate to get back in the winning column. Who do you see being victorious? Yeah,
I mean, sometimes I can talk about the wounded animal theory and who's coming more hurt and more eager to win. And really, I think both teams are exactly in the same boat. Both of them are coming off consecutive losses. I think what does help Arizona State, at least in my opinion, is that they did have a bye week to go and correct everything. You look at USC after that big loss to Oregon. People are saying that pretty much sealed the deal for Clay Helton being the head coach for USC going forward. I know USC is officially hiring an athletic director today, and you're going to hear that name, Urban Meyer, the name we've heard for the last few months, now even spoke even a little louder over there in Los Angeles. So you just kind of wonder how all that really affects USC, and really have they mailed in the season with basically a lame duck head coach. And maybe sometimes that aspect can be a little overstated and maybe overemphasized, but I think it's something you definitely have to take in consideration. And again, it's not that USC has more problems than ASU or vice versa, but I think ASU having that extra week to correct everything need to be corrected, and USC coming off such a huge loss against Oregon. Again, turmoil with the head coaching position. Now to come and play ASU, I think that gives ASU somewhat an advantage. So I see Arizona State bouncing back 38-27 on Saturday.
Thank you, Hode. For more, keep it locked into DevilsDigest.com, and of course, all of our pregame coverage and live from Sun Devil Stadium on Saturday and postgame coverage. For Hode Urbino, I'm Sande Charles. We'll see you on Saturday.